42,000 years ago, in a cold mixed woodland, grasslands stretching across the ancient Central Asian frontier, lean and deeply dark-skinned early humans moved through a world shaped by frost-kissed mornings, wide golden plains, scattered conifer stands, and long winding valleys traced with pale mist, their thin, sinewy bodies wrapped in simple black wool and fur waist coverings as they stepped barefoot across hardened earth where dry grass and brittle twigs cracked softly beneath their weight, beginning another day in the quiet, repetitive rhythm that held their survival together as firmly as the stone tools they carried. Each morning began the same way as the sky shifted from blue-gray to faint silver, revealing low hills dotted with shrubs stiffened by cold wind, and the camp stirred with small movements, someone blowing gently on last night's embers until orange sparks glowed again, someone carrying rough branches to feed the fire, someone shaking dry grass from sleeping mats as others walked toward the streams to fill gourds with icy water, their breath drifting in thin clouds around their faces. The deep, dark-skinned hunters, their ribs visible beneath lean chests hardened by years of endurance, stepped quietly past the first line of frost-tipped trees, their coarse natural hair ruffled by cold wind as they studied the land for signs of movement in the open plains beyond, where soft ridges of earth held faint depressions of passing animals. These early humans lived in cycles shaped by patience, repetition, and the steady return of tasks that anchored them in a world both harsh and abundant. While hunters ventured out, others remained near the clustered shelters built from long wooden poles, bundles of reeds and layers of hardened clay collected from riverbanks, their rounded forms rising like earth-colored domes between boulders and thorny shrubs. Women and younger gatherers walked toward patches of hardy shrubs and stunted fruit trees that survived the cold seasons, searching for nuts, dry berries, cracked pods, and edible roots, testing the earth with pointed sticks, lifting stones to check for insects clinging beneath, and dropping what they found into woven baskets slung over narrow shoulders. At the same time, a few individuals worked near the stream, where water moved slowly between smooth stones, scraping fish traps made of reeds, placing sharpened sticks into the shallows, and moving with quiet discipline so as not to scatter the silver shapes gliding beneath the surface. Once caught, the fish were cleaned with flat stones and arranged on racks of branches to dry in the cold air. Back at the huts, builders pressed new clay onto small cracks formed during the night's cold, their hands smoothing surfaces, reinforcing walls, adjusting roof edges woven from grasses soaked in water to remain flexible, and checking for any gaps where wind might slip through when dusk returned. Every movement was deliberate, measured, and balanced, contributing to a larger rhythm that had no beginning or end. Gather, carry, press, shape, return, repeat. Far from camp, the hunters soon reached stretches of open land bordered by sparse clusters of pine trees and scattered rocks dusted with frost. And there they knelt to examine a set of massive tracks pressed deeply into hardened soil, the unmistakable round impressions of a woolly rhinoceros that had passed through hours earlier, leaving a subtle trail of bent shrubs, disturbed grass, and wide arcs where its heavy body brushed against the vegetation. Following the trail required slow, careful travel across rolling terrain where pale tufts of grass swayed in the wind and low shrubs trembled beneath the weight of frost. Sometimes the hunters dropped to their stomachs, pressing fingers lightly to the earth to feel the subtle shift of moisture where the animal's steps had compressed the soil, and sometimes they paused entirely, listening to distant rustles, scanning the horizon for movement, or watching the way cold wind bent the grass in long, smooth waves. As the sun climbed higher, pale light warmed their skin but never removed the crispness of the air, and the hunters advanced through passages between tree clusters, stepping over fallen branches, weaving around boulders streaked with lichen, and climbing gentle slopes where they could see long distances across the plains. Behind them, the rest of the community continued their quiet labor, gatherers returning with baskets full of nuts and fibrous roots, builders rubbing clay onto frames, children imitating adults by shaping small clay figures, and elders sorting stones by size, so the younger ones could choose the perfect pieces for scraping, smoothing, or sharpening tools. When the hunters finally spotted the woolly rhinoceros grazing near a patch of pale shrubs at the edge of a shallow valley, they crouched low against the slope, their breath steady as they observed the massive creature whose shaggy fur rippled in the wind and whose curved horns scraped the ground as it foraged among stiff grasses. The humans moved carefully, circling the valley ridge, placing stones and narrow paths to subtly redirect the animal if it fled, choosing routes where the wind carried their scent away, and signaling each other with slight tilt of the head or gentle taps on the ground. Their approach was slow, deliberate, and unbroken, echoing the same patience they practiced when tracking antelope or setting fish traps. They inched forward from multiple sides until they formed a wide, subtle arc around the rhinoceros, leaving the creature only one clear escape route that led toward gentle terrain where the hunters could drive it without risk of harm to themselves. When the moment came to reveal themselves, the hunters rose in unison with controlled, coordinated movement, stepping from behind shrubs and rocks, spreading out so the creature would see movement in multiple directions and choose the path they had carefully opened. The woolly rhinoceros lifted its head, shook its massive body, and began to move, not in panic but in steady retreat, turning toward the open corridor that led downslope, and the hunters followed with long, determined strides, keeping distance but maintaining pressure, guiding the animal through the valley without forcing it into dangerous speed. The chase stretched across uneven earth and through clusters of pale grass, the humans adjusting their pace to keep the creature moving while never overwhelming it, using only presence, sound, and movement to steer its direction. After a long, patient pursuit, the rhinoceros began to slow, its energy waning from the guided travel rather than fear, and eventually it stopped beside a stand of low shrubs where the hunters gradually closed the distance and secured the animal using coordinated movement that posed no unnecessary force, relying on strategy rather than aggression. With the rhinoceros finally calm and still, the hunters worked with respectful efficiency, preparing the animal for transport in a clean, controlled manner that avoided unnecessary distress or harm to the environment, collecting what they needed in ways that aligned with the natural cycles they had lived within for countless generations. And when the process was complete, they lifted bundled portions and began the long journey back to the settlement as the sun drifted toward the far hills. As the hunters returned, the camp shifted into warm activity. Fires brightening, cooking stones arranged, woven mats unrolled, and baskets prepared to receive the day's gathering. Children ran to meet the hunters, elders stood to help carry bundles, and builders paused their work to watch the silhouettes crossing the ridge. The community organized itself with practiced ease, hanging meat to dry, placing portions near gentle flames, gathering roots and fish into cooking pits, and storing nuts and berries inside clay-lined hollows. As dusk settled, the cold wind softened and the beehive-shaped huts absorbed the last gold of the fading sun, casting long shadows across the clearing. People sat near the central fire, their lean bodies relaxed after a long day, hands loosening, shoulders lowering, eyes drifting toward the flames where sparks rose into the deep blue sky. Fish smoked slowly on racks, roots simmered in gourd containers, and the scent of warm food filled the air in gentle waves. The valley dimmed into quiet, broken only by the distant cries of birds settling into the treetops and the low rustle of wind moving through grass. As night deepened, the humans retreated into their huts, curling on beds of dried grass warmed by low indoor fires, listening to the steady heartbeat of the land outside, the whisper of the wind, the crackle of embers, the faint movement of animals beyond the tree line, ending their day in the same calm, grounded rhythm that would carry them into the next dawn.